Welcome, everybody, to your free GMAT Prep Hour. My name is Reed Arnold. I will be your host through the wonderful world of the GMAT this evening. It is March 12th, 2024. To those of you that are here live, glad to have you. To those of you that are watching the recording on YouTube, I hope you're finding these useful. We have a whole library of these available. I hope you're poking through them. You could honestly build a full syllabus of GMAT Prep from our free GMAT Prep Hours at this point. I keep having to really rack my brain to find another thing to talk about. So we really have covered a lot of big stuff. And if you're thoughtful, you can design a full curriculum around these things. If you're looking for other free prep options, you can try our first class for free. We talk about some big GMAT stuff there, how to study, how the test works, how critical reasoning works. We're talking about critical reasoning tonight, but you can get a brush up on critical reasoning and how data sufficiency works, a GMAT specific question type. You can do a similar thing with our interactive on-demand course. You can get a sample of that for free. We also have free foundation of GMAT math workshops. We run these twice a month, sometimes more, but usually twice a month. We have two free 5-hour courses to take, one on computation, one on variables. Computations is more about how to deal with math with numbers. Variables is how to deal with math with variables. You can think of it as almost, arithmetic and algebra. And we really get to the foundation of how the foundations of how to think about these concepts in a GMAT way. Doesn't matter the order you take them in, each one stands alone, though you will find that they communicate with each other. For today's lesson, I'm not saying you need to watch these videos first, but I would recommend watching these videos. And if you are watching a recording, you maybe should watch these first. I don't know if you have 5 hours to spare. I think today's lesson does stand on its own, but it will definitely speak to some of these, and I think those lessons will speak to the one here today. So again, we've covered a lot of stuff, so things are overlapping a little bit. I am excited about tonight's lesson. I do think it's a new angle on some things that we've touched on before, so I hope you find it very useful. But if you're looking for more practice or more clarity or more kind of just different approaches to what we talk about tonight, or different thoughts on critical reasoning, assumption family, these videos are outstanding, and we have several others on the subject. So I think without further ado, let's jump in. Before I introduce exactly what we're going to be doing with critical reasoning tonight, I'm going to give you two problems to warm up with, 2 minutes each. So go ahead and give this one a swing. I'll give you 2 minutes. All right, that is 2 minutes. If you have an answer, go ahead and send it in. Curious what our attendees think here. If you need a guess, that's fine. Make it a guess. Just choose A, B, C, or D. Okay. All right. I see some answers in. We have some B's, a question mark B. Let's jump to the second question here. And while this is going to look very similar, I do want you to approach it as if it's fresh. Start over from nothing because there are some differences. And spoiler, the differences are kind of the whole purpose of doing this lesson. So try this one for 2 minutes. Typo there. That's about 2 minutes. Okay. All right, final guesses here. So the first question, the answer was B. The second question, the answer was D. And we will explain and understand why that is the case in a moment. For now, I want you to look at these both. These are the two arguments you just dealt with. I want you to spend a minute trying to clarify what the difference is between them. So obviously they have a lot of similar parts, but what is the fundamental difference between them and how does that affect how you should think about these arguments? See if you can just explain that to yourself. Keep making this typo. Catronians, not Catrovians. This is the first, the one on top is an official question from the official practice tests. I just tweaked it for the second paragraph. So tonight what we are talking about are the two major categories of critical reasoning argument types. This is a subject I've sat on for some time. In fact, I was poking through my old draft. I had a draft of this lesson, a very rough 10% completed draft of this lesson in November of 2020. So we're going on 3.5, almost 4 years that I've had this thing cooking. And frankly, the reason I haven't fully done it is because I do a version of it in one of these earlier videos. I talk about something similar in the critical reasoning games video. And one of our attendees here asked about these videos that I've linked. And in one of these other videos, I think it was the 3 key questions video, Man, I've been here so long, I have a whole like lore of free GMAT prep hours. But in that video, I mentioned the critical reasoning games video and say I would change a few things about how I talk about critical reasoning. And that is true. But I still think that video is worth watching. And I think some of the big things I would change is what I'm talking about tonight. I think what I talk about tonight will clarify how I would change my approach to that critical reasoning games video. But I think in large, that video still very much applies. So what we're talking about today are the two major categories of critical reasoning argument. Uh, and I call them prediction plans and guessed causes. Most assumption family arguments, those are most questions that are most arguments that, sorry, excuse me, most critical reasoning questions that deal with an argument in some way, meaning they're asking you to find an assumption, strengthen an argument, weaken an argument, evaluate an argument, and I think even questions like fill in the blank and explain a discrepancy. I talk about those in the weakeners in disguise videos. I think all of these are in the assumption family. And in the assumption family, there are two major kinds of arguments that the GMAT will give you. There are some that don't fit these categories, but mostly arguments are going to fit into one or the other, and they're either prediction plans or guessed causes. What is the difference? Well, in a prediction plan, here's a very simple prediction plan. We have it is raining. That's a premise. And the conclusion, the thing the author really wants you to believe, is that the street is wet. It's raining, therefore the street is wet. In a guessed cause, those will reverse. The premise is that the street is wet, therefore it must be raining or it must have rained. So same ideas, right? It's raining, a wet street. It's raining, a wet street. The question is, which one is my premise and which one is my conclusion? And you can think of this in terms of cause effect. In a prediction plan, the premise is going to be the cause of what is some cause effect relationship. Premise, it is raining, therefore this will cause the street to be wet. I think the street is wet because it is raining. In a guessed cause, the premise is the effect. I see that the street is wet. I conclude, therefore, it must have rained or it must be raining. I think it must have rained because the street is wet. In a prediction plan, I think the street is wet because it is raining or it rained, whichever. And that's an important thing to note, is that the tense of this doesn't really matter. The tense of the relationship is not what determines if it's prediction plan or guessed cause. It is raining, therefore the street is wet or will get wet. It rained, therefore the street got wet. I can do it in past tense. It will rain, therefore the street will get wet. I can do it in the future tense. It has been raining, therefore the street is probably, or the street will be wet. It's not about tense, it's about cause effect. Is the premise the cause and the conclusion the effect, or is the premise the effect and the conclusion the cause? Premise, the street is wet, it must have rained or it must be raining. The street was wet, it probably rained. The street has been wet, it's probably been raining, it must have been raining. The street will be wet. This last one doesn't make much sense unless you have, prescience. The street will be wet, so it will probably rain. If I know the street will be wet, now it's probably because it's gonna rain. It's not the tense, it's the cause-effect relationship and how I'm using that in the logical form of the argument. Is it effect, therefore cause, or is it cause, therefore effect? And I'm going to argue that it helps to know which kind you're dealing with, because identifying that helps you identify what you should be thinking about for that question. It helps you identify the scope. Scope is a big thing in critical reasoning, right? What should I be curious about? Identifying what kind of argument you're in will help answer that question. So take a look at these two again. Take a minute and a half, 2 minutes to reassess these and tell me which one of them is a prediction plan and which one of them is a guessed cause argument. Again, I made the Catrovia Cravonia mix up. Pretty sure there's a question where we have Catrovia. That's why I typed the wrong fake country. Okay, which one is prediction plan and which one is guest cause? The top is a prediction plan. The bottom is a guest cause. The top has this structure. We're seeing that the number of students enrolled in college is increasing. Therefore, that's a cause. We think the effect will be there's the number of people with college degrees entering the job market will be higher, significantly higher. Because we're seeing more students enrolled in college, we think that there will be an increase. We think there will be an increase in the number of Cravonians entering the job market with college degrees. Okay, that is a prediction we are making. We think the effect will come from the cause. The second was a guest cause. We're noticing an effect. Hey, there's a lot of people coming into the job market with college degrees. That's the effect. It must be the conclusion. It must be because the number of Cravonians in college has increased. There's just more college students now. And again, the reason to categorize this is it's going to help us pinpoint what we need to think about. And we do this, we find what to think about before we go to the answer choices, ideally. In my 3 key question videos, I list these as the 3 key questions to ask before you go to the answer choices. In particular, this second one reigns supreme. You want to develop a knack for figuring out how the conclusion, the opposite of the conclusion, could be true, even though the premises are true. And if you know that you're in a guest cause or a prediction plan, it'll help you know what form of that question to take. So if we look at a prediction plan argument, right? Cause, it is raining, therefore the street is going to be wet. What do we need to wonder about? Well, it's our job to wonder, will this cause actually lead to this effect? Or is something going to interrupt this cause? Is the cause not actually going to lead to the effect? Or will the cause have an unintended consequence? It doesn't make sense in this particular argument, but could the cause have an unintended consequence that actually prevents the effect from happening? These are some common things you should ask about a prediction plan argument. And what you don't want to wonder, we don't wonder, is the cause actually happening? You don't actually want to wonder, is it raining? Is it really raining? Is it raining a lot or a little? That's not what you want to think about in a prediction plan argument. You don't want to wonder, is the cause happening? You want to know, will this cause actually lead to the effect? Will something interrupt the cause and effect? Will the cause have an unintended consequence that prevents the effect? There's really wanting to know if that cause leads to this effect. So in this situation, in the first question we saw, the number of students enrolled in colleges in Cravonia is increasing. Does that mean the number of people with college degrees entering the job market will be significantly higher? Well, we want to wonder if this cause, the number of students entering uh, entering the is the cause, the number of students in college, this increase in the number of students in college, really going to lead to an increase in the number of workers in the workforce, entering the workforce with a college degree? Or could something interrupt that cause and effect? The unintended consequences doesn't really come into play in this example either. Right, but so what could stop this? Well, the people get college degrees but don't enter the workforce. That would mean this cause doesn't lead to this effect. In fact, I would argue any version, any useful thought that we have about this argument for the GMAT is going to be around that idea. I can't think of anything else that really would be pertinent to this argument. We really just want to know, okay, we have more students in college. I believe you. Are those students in college who get college degrees really, or are those students really going to enter the workforce with a college degree? So I guess it's, do they actually get a college degree, right? Maybe they enter college, they're enrolled in college, but a lot of them don't graduate. So there's a question. Will they actually get a degree? If they do, will they enter the workforce? If the number enrolled in college, if the number of degrees isn't actually changing, then this argument falls apart. This cause doesn't lead to this effect. If they get degrees but then don't go to the workforce, then this cause doesn't lead to this effect. And so that's what I'm thinking about for the answer choices. It's the answer choices are going to deal with this thought somehow. And that is why answer choice B is correct here. If the average number of years that a student stays in college has been increasing, they're staying in college longer before they complete a degree, then they're not going to enter the workforce yet. They're staying in college. That cause doesn't lead to this effect. In a guessed cause, the street is wet, therefore it must have rained. Our job is to wonder, is there are a few, this looks like a lot, but honestly, most of what you want to know is this. Is there another cause for this effect? The street is wet, it must have rained. Is there another reason the street could be wet? In certain situations, you might ask if the causation is reverse. You might ask if there's a third phenomenon causing both. That doesn't make sense here, right? Like what could cause it to rain and the street to be wet? That doesn't make sense in this particular instance. The number one thing to think about is, could there be another cause? To strengthen or weaken an argument like this, you want to show that more cause leads to more effect. That would strengthen the argument, or less cause leads to less effect. That would weaken the argument. And in a rare instance, you might wonder if there's other evidence for the cause, right? The street is wet, it must have rained. Well, is there other evidence that it rained? Do people hold umbrellas? Are people holding umbrellas right now? Did the weatherman say it was going to rain? There's, other evidence for raining would be useful here. But mostly you're wondering, is there another cause for this effect? Meaning, like, did the sprinkler system break? Did a fire hydrant burst? Someone just out there pouring water all over the street. If there's another cause, this argument falls apart. Okay, so here, the number of people, we know that the number of people entering the job market with college degrees is higher. So we're concluding it must be that there's more Crevonians enrolled in colleges. The main thought I have is, could something else cause the number of Crevonians with college degrees enter the job market? Is there another reason we have more college graduates entering the job market that's not more students enrolled in the colleges? So notice the difference here, right? In this argument, I didn't doubt that the number enrolled in college is increasing. I wanted to know if it will really lead to the number of people with college degrees entering the job market going up. Here, I don't doubt that the number entering the job market with college degrees is going up. I want to know if there's another reason besides more students in college. Could there be immigrants to Cravonia with college degrees entering the job market? Okay, that's another cause. That's another reason we would see an increase in the number of college degrees entering the job market. Is the percentage of graduates with college degrees who enter the job market increasing. It's the same total number, but if there's a higher percent of college graduates entering the job market, that would explain it. It's not that there are more students, it's that more of the students we've had are just entering the job market. This is why the right answer to this question was D. What if people who weren't in the job market, who had college degrees, are entering the job market for any reason, right? D gives some extra details. That's fine. Talks about the economic hardship, whatever. That's nice. Point is there a reason? Is something happening? Is anything happening that's causing people with college degrees who weren't in the workforce to enter? If that's happening, it kind of ruins the idea that it's an increase in college students. There's another plausible cause. So this argument falls apart. And most arguments fit one of these two. They're either prediction plan or guessed cause. So before we practice this a little bit more, I want to make a quick note on the usefulness of being specific on conclusions. This honestly could be another video at some point. Since we're asking so much about the specific, and this, by the way, is especially useful for prediction plan. But I can't deny that it will have its use in guessed cause as well. Right? If I'm predicting a number will increase versus a number will increase significantly, well, why do I need to note that distinction? Because we're very curious about, will this effect happen? Will this cause really cause a number to increase versus will this cause, let's use a different word, really lead to an increase in some number versus will this cause really lead to a significant increase in some number? The reason you want to distinguish this is because what you want to distinguish what constitutes a fail state, right? A fail state for the first is that there's no increase. A fail state for the second is that there's no increase or an insignificant increase. And that distinction might matter. An insignificant increase in the first is still an increase, and so that's not a fail state. But if it clarifies significant, then you might consider a world where it does increase, just not a lot. Now, you can go too far with this, and sometimes this doesn't matter all that much, but it can. And so it's just worth noting stuff like this and really pinpointing what it would mean for the conclusion to be wrong, right? What's the difference between a bad scenario improving versus a bad scenario becoming good? A problem gets better versus a problem gets totally fixed. What does it mean to fail at that? Well, if a bad scenario improves and things are still bad, well, that's still improvement. Versus a bad scenario that should be fixed. Well, if it's not fixed, if it's not good, then it's a failed state of that conclusion. The difference, a prediction, I predict a thing will happen versus I predict a thing will happen without a bad consequence. There are many times on an argument where they predict a thing will happen and then a trap answer has like a negative consequence. Well, the negative consequence is irrelevant if the conclusion isn't about that negative consequence. If I just say a thing will happen, I don't care that something bad might happen also for critical reasoning purposes. If the conclusion says a thing will happen without this bad consequence, now I care about the bad consequence not happening. So broad note, just make sure you're thoughtful and specific about conclusions. It will also help you see the scope. So let's do some practice here. Here are 8 arguments. Go ahead and take 5 minutes to look at these and categorize them as either prediction plan or guessed cause arguments, and clarify what you should think about given that they are that kind of argument. Okay, so categorize. 2, specify what to think about given that categorization. Okay, take 5 minutes for this. I'm going to jump off camera. All right, that is about 5 minutes. Let's go through these. Here are your answers. First one here, because attendance for our city's professional athletic teams are at an all-time high, they must be winning a lot of games. That is a guessed cause. We're noticing an effect. There's a lot of attendance. We're guessing a cause. We must be winning a lot. Our job is to wonder, right? So what should we think? Is there another reason attendance is high? Could we have high attendance but not be winning a lot? Maybe tickets are really cheap. I don't know. So maybe we have one really big player that we're still not winning, right? Like, I don't know, some other reason why we have high attendance, but it's not that we're winning a lot of games. That's a guessed cause. The second one's a prediction plan. It should be legally required to put the amount of sugar in soda on each container to decrease the proportion of people who are overweight. We want to know if the cause, putting something on a container, will actually lead to the effect that will decrease the proportion of the population who is overweight. Will putting the label shows how much sugar is on a can decrease the proportion of people who are overweight, or will there be an unintended consequence and it will actually increase the proportion of people who are overweight? Or I think those are big ones. Okay, will this cause really lead to this effect? Could something stop it from happening? Will people not pay attention? Now, this is a good example also. You might wonder, like, will people actually follow the law? And that is a fair thought. That is something that GMAT could deal with. But more likely, the GMAT is interested in a world where people do follow the law, but it doesn't really matter. It still doesn't lead to the effect, right? We want to be as generous with the premises as possible. So, okay, if we pass the law that it's required to put how much sugar is on the containers, how could it still not lead to the effect? It's even thinking like, well, maybe they'll put it on the container, but it'll be really small. Again, that could be it, but even that feels a little bit like poking a premise. They could deal with it, but more likely it's like, okay, let's imagine a world where it's on the container and it's big and bold and everyone sees it, but somehow it still doesn't lead to this prediction. It doesn't lead to a decrease in the proportion of people who are overweight. Okay. The third one is also prediction plan. The number of feral cats has probably decreased since for years now. Feral cats have been spayed and neutered when captured. Okay, we know that there's a cause. We're spaying and neutering our feral cats when we capture them. So therefore, the effect we think is that the number of feral cats has probably gone down. We want to know if that maybe isn't true. Okay. Yeah, we've been spaying and neutering the feral cats that we capture, but could that not lead to this effect? And I'm wondering now that that's kind of interesting because it could be like, well, maybe the number of feral cats comes from the offspring of uh, cats that have owners, domesticated cats. That's an interesting version of it. Kind of does have a guest cause component to it. But ultimately, it's still saying that the prediction won't happen just because the effect won't happen or didn't happen, even though the cause is true. That's still the land to be in. I use more sunscreen than ever, but I got the worst the sunburn I've ever gotten. So the sunscreen must not be working. That's a guest cause. We notice the effect. I want to know, well, maybe the reason I got the worst sunburn is not that the sunscreen wasn't working. Maybe I spent more time in the sun than I ever have before. Maybe I forgot to reapply the sunscreen. Maybe, with a different sunscreen, the sunburn would have been even worse. Just because it's the worst I've even gotten doesn't mean it couldn't be worse. Maybe the sunscreen was the best protection I could have gotten. Some other reason I got the worst sunburn. Maybe I'm on antibiotics. I remember I might be making this up, but I think antibiotics actually make you much more susceptible to sunscreen or to sunburn. I don't know why I think that. I might be making this up. Okay, I'm seeing in the chat that that's true. Pulled that from the recesses of my memory, right? So it's not that the sunscreen didn't work, it's that I'm on antibiotics. Sunscreen did as best as it could, right? What other causes are there? The top right is a prediction plan. It's similar to the top left, but it's the reverse, right? Our teams are winning, so attendance must be high. There must be a lot of people at the games because we're winning so much. Well, maybe not. Maybe the fact that we're winning hasn't led to an increase in attendance. Maybe tickets are so expensive. Who knows, right? Somehow this cause didn't lead to the expected effect. The one below that is also a prediction plan. The city expects to double the number of officers on duty. That's the cause. The effect is that we think crime will decrease significantly. And again, there's a moment where it's significantly. It's okay, well, hold up. Will it not decrease significantly? Will there only be a minor decrease? Does crime tend to happen in places no police officers go, whether there's one or a million? Then this cause will not lead to this effect. This year's low GDP is obviously a result of the president's new tax policy. That is a guessed cause. The effect, we're noticing there's a low GDP this year. We're guessing the cause is that it's a new tax policy. I want to know if there's another reason the GDP could be low. This last one is unusual, intentionally. The price of bread has dropped, and it was an unusually rainy spring. That should have been there. There must have been a big increase in the wheat grown by farmers this year. This is an example of a hybrid. And every now and then you do get some that are kind of hybrids of the prediction plan guessed cause, though I will note that they are not common. Again, the two big buckets are the big ones. It's either prediction plan or a guessed cause. But here we have both a cause uh, for something and an effect for something in the premise. We know the price of bread is low, and we know it was a rainy spring. So we're concluding, oh, there must have been a lot of wheat grown, meaning the rainy spring caused a lot of wheat to be grown, which caused a low price of bread because supply was high. And what do we want to think in this case? We kind of want to think everything's in play. Did the rainy spring really lead to an increase in the amount of wheat? If there was an increase of wheat, was it used to make bread? Is that increase in wheat really why the price of bread is low, or is there another reason the price of bread might be low? Are there any other causes for a low price of bread? So you're kind of thinking both at once in situations like this. You have to think about the prediction and the guessed cause. Here's another hybrid that's a little more common than that kind of hybrid we just saw. Take a look at this one and specify where the premise and conclusion is and why it's a hybrid of both a prediction plan and a guessed cause. Take a minute and a half for this. Okay. Now, you could maybe argue that this part should also go in the conclusion that the whole thing, okay, so, send more students to private schools that will to cause more students with college degrees. I'm kind of impartial with that. The ultimate goal of this whole thing is to get a higher proportion of students with a college degree. So I know that should be the conclusion. The whole thing is predicated on a guest cause. College grads are more likely to have attended a private school. We are guessing that private school is the cause of college graduation. Maybe there's another reason these students graduated from college. Maybe there's a third cause, right? Maybe wealthier students are more likely to go to college, to private high schools, and wealthier students are more likely to graduate from college. So there's a third cause causing both of these phenomenon. And now we're basing a plan off of assumption about those two phenomenon, a causal link that actually is caused by this unknown or unspecified third thing. Hybrids like this, I would say, usually they ultimately devolve into a guest cause. Not always, I can't say all the time. I'm leery of 100% in any GMAT talk. But most hybrids like this end up being a guest cause game. You want to know, well, is there another reason college grads are more likely to have gone to a private high school besides private high schools causing people to be more likely to graduate college? That still tends to be like the grain to think about. That's the lesson. That's the game. These two major kinds of arguments in the rare hybrid, but which kind of argument are you dealing with? Use that to generate the relevant question for that problem. And so now I just made a list of official questions that fit this, and we'll go through the ones we can in 10 minutes, and then I'll put the other ones up. For those who watch the recording, you'll be able to do the rest, just pause the video. Okay, but let's just take 2 minutes here. And I want you to do this question, and don't just answer it. I want you to try to contextualize it in terms of what we've talked about today. Take 2 minutes. Okay, that is 2 minutes. Go ahead and type in the chat whether you think this is a prediction plan situation or a guest cause situation. See what we think. Yeah, this is going to be a guest cause. Good Sativia. This is also a good candidate to pitch this other. I think it's useful. This is a useful one to do in conjunction with Weakeners in Disguise. So watch that video if you haven't yet, because this is a fill in the blank, and I think fill in the blanks tend to be Weakeners in Disguise. What we have here is a situation where some people conclude, not our author in this case, but some people conclude that computer use leads to less TV use. Down, let's see if I can down. Where you use computer use leads to less TV use, and why? What's the premise for that? Well, people who own computers watch less TV. So these people who think this, not our author actually says like this is wrong. This is not really accurate. But the people who think this, they are guessing that, oh, computer use is causing less TV watching. And so our job is to wonder, is there another reason people own computers watch less TV besides that computer use causes less TV use? Why else would people who own computers not watch as much TV if it's not that using a computer is eating up their TV time? And so the answer that most deals with that thought is C. People who own computers are just not TV watchers to begin with. This is a sample bias, which is something mentioned in the critical reasoning games video. We're looking at the sample here. Okay, yeah, there's computer users and TV watchers, but are computer users just not the type to watch TV in general? Take 2 minutes for this question. That's 2 minutes. Go ahead and categorize this for yourself as a guess cause or a prediction plan. and then identify the thought that you get from that categorization, right? What's the relevant question? This argument is a prediction plan. The prediction is that, hey, if you take off this tariff for cashew exports, it's going to hurt urban unemployment. I should maybe specify that it's urban unemployment here, not just unemployment. It's our job to wonder, is that true? Will removing this tariff hurt urban unemployment? Is there a way removing the tariff will help urban unemployment, even though, yeah, the processing plants for cashews are in an urban area, but could removing the tariff help urban unemployment in some way? Okay, and yeah, this requires, we need to understand the story, right? There's processing plants that are domestic and not domestic. We have the tariff to keep the cashews at domestic plants. And so we think that removing the tariff, oh, well, then those plants will be in trouble. They'll have to shut down. Arguably, it'll cause unemployment in urban areas because they're in urban areas. We want to know, maybe they won't. Or maybe it won't. Maybe they'll get a job somewhere else. Maybe there's plenty of jobs available for the people who get fired from the plants. Or just, somehow will this not end up hurting urban unemployment? The correct answer to this question, very sneakily, is E. If the tariff, surprise, surprise, is actually the thing that is unintentionally causing urban unemployment. Farmers who could stay farmers are having to come to cities because cashews aren't profitable because of the tariff. None of the other answer choices actually break the prediction plan cause effect chain. Any questions before we do one more? All right, let's look at the answer. Okay, so some of the byproducts of processing cashews are used for manufacturing paints and plastics. Okay, well, again, also I haven't mentioned this. We're trying to weaken the argument. Well, that doesn't show that shutting down the plants won't maybe help urban unemployment or won't hurt urban unemployment. The fact that there are other uses for cashews is not relevant to that key question. Other countries in which cashews are processed subsidize their processing plants. Okay, what does that have to do with Kernland? How does that show that ending the tariff won't actually won't affect or might even help urban unemployment? More people in Kernland are engaged in farming cashews than in processing them. Okay, but again, how will ending the tariff not affect or help urban unemployment if more people are on the farms farming cashews than in processing them? Question is, when the tariff ends, are those in the processing plants SOL? C doesn't deal with that. Buying unprocessed cashews at lower than world market prices enable cashew processors to sell processed nuts at competitive prices. So this gives some insight as to why the tariff helps the plants so they can sell their nuts at competitive prices. But it doesn't say why. Our goal is to say why ending the tariff doesn't actually have the bad effects we think it will. This is a good effect of the tariff. We want to say, well, ending the tariff won't be so bad. E is the only one that fits. All right, let's look at Sepphoris. Take 2 minutes. That is 2 minutes. Try to categorize, prediction plan, or guessed cause, and what thought emerges because of that. I would categorize this argument as a guessed cause. We notice the effect is that, hey, these motifs in all these different places or sorry, the motifs in Sepphoris, they have all these things that aren't in the city, that aren't from the city. And in fact, many places have these images. So the cause, that's the effect. The cause must be that there were traveling artisans who went from city to city to make these mosaics. We wonder, is that really it? Is there another reason there'd be identical pictures in different cities? The argument is assuming, nope, it's the traveling artisans. We're wondering, is there another plausible reason? So the author must be assuming that there wasn't a common repertory of designs that just artisans everywhere were familiar with. That's another cause. Another cause is that actually just artisans everywhere made the same images, even if it wasn't, creatures naturally that naturally live in that habitat, that naturally live near that city. Just everyone makes the same images. Not that there's traveling artisans going around doing it, it's just that everyone has the same images. So I have a question about the negation test. If we negate the answers on an assumption question, it can help you find the right answer. So if we say the Sepphoris mosaics are composed exclusively of types of stones found in the Sepphoris area, that does not ruin this argument. The traveling artisan could have come and used the natural stones, even though they made pictures of things that were not naturally occurring to the region. B, there is a single region to which all the species in the Sepphoris are native. Okay, that could still be a traveling artisan going around making those images. That doesn't ruin the argument. C, if we negate some motifs appear in Sepphoris mosaics that do not appear in other places. So some of the images are unique to Sepphoris. That doesn't mean it wasn't a traveling artisan who made them. And again, the thing we're most curious about is there another cause? Is there another reason the motifs appear everywhere? D, all of the animals are identifiable as known species. So if we negate that, it'd be like some animals are not there. Some animals are fictitious species. That doesn't ruin the argument that it's a traveling artisan doing it. Doesn't give us another possible cause. If we negate E, there was a common repertory of designs where artisans who lived all over the place were familiar. That's another cause for why the motifs would be similar. It's just a common repertory. You don't have to travel around using it. Everyone has it in all places, just what we draw, or it's what we make mosaics out of. So E gives us, when negated, another possible cause. So it must be the answer. All right, gang. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show other examples just for a few seconds. And I'm doing this for people who watch the recording. So if you're here, you might feel free to bounce or at least cover your ears because you might not want to spoil the answers to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put up the question so you can pause and try it. And then you can hit play and I'll pull up the answer and the explanation. Okay. So for those that are here, if you stay, that's fine, but you might not want to spoil the answer for yourself. Here's another question. If you're watching the recording, hit pause. Try it and categorize it. Guessed cause or prediction plan. I would call this a prediction plan. And again, I think this one helps to watch the Weakeners in Disguise video. Some people, I really think it's helpful, most helpful to think of this as a won't. Some people think that we won't double our profits. Our author disagrees, but some people think they won't double profits because the yields will lower per plant. It's our job to wonder, well, maybe we will double profits, even though the plants produce less corn per plant. That's what we're wondering about. Why could we double profits even though we make less yield per plant? And that might get you thinking about cost, and that might get you to see why E is correct. No, wait, excuse me. A. We can cut costs on weed control and irrigation. That might cause us to double profits. Okay. So here, go ahead and pause if you're watching the recording. I would categorize this one as a guessed cause. The thing that we notice is that teens who smoke have higher risk of depression. The guessed cause, the conclusion is the cause. Oh, it's probably smoking that causes the depression. It's our job to wonder, is it? Is there something else that causes the depression? Or could something cause both depression and a desire to smoke? Or could a reverse cause? Could being depressed be a reason to smoke? This is a good example of a reverse cause. And indeed, that is what the answer deals with. It's not that smoking causes depression. What if depression causes smoking? Trying to remember the answer. I'm doing this quickly. I think the answer is D. No. A. Yeah. Participants who were depressed at the start of the study were. What if the people who were depressed at the start became smokers? It's another sample bias also. Right? If people who were not smokers at the beginning but were depressed became smokers, it's possible that depression causes smoking. It's not that smoking caused depression. This is reverse causation plus the sample bias. Try this one here. Pause if you're watching the recording. This is a prediction plan. A prediction is that switching to cotton will increase the income. It's our job to wonder, will it though? Will switching to cotton increase the income? How could it actually hurt their income, even though it seems like there's an opportunity to grow cotton right now, right? Cotton's been devastated everywhere else. Yeah, but maybe switching will hurt our income somehow. Maybe a lot of other people have the same idea, and it's actually going to end up lowering the price of cotton. The answer here is B. This one's a tricky question, but it actually is. If we switch to cotton and this new pesticide comes out that actually will kill this insect, then it seems like the people who have been hurt by the insect will grow their cotton back pretty quick. And actually, it turns out they might lower the price of cotton, and we would have been better sticking with our soybeans or whatever we were originally growing. Pause. Give this one a try. This one I also consider a prediction plan. Prediction is that there's no significant public health benefit for this new type of vaccine. Our job is to wonder, maybe there is. Maybe there is a good public health benefit with this phase of vaccine, even though influenza doesn't affect children. Maybe giving this vaccine to children will still be helpful. And that is why the answer D is going to be the right answer here. Because if it keeps children from getting influenza, even though they don't really get hurt by influenza, but it keeps adults from getting influenza, we win. It's a good thing. Another one where it would help to watch the Weakeners in Disguise video, but go ahead, pause, give this one an attempt, try to categorize it as guess cause or prediction plan. I would categorize this one as prediction plan. The original prediction that people would make is that, oh, well, if we don't get new technology, we probably won't have a decrease in reclamation costs. It's our job to wonder, maybe there will be a decrease in reclamation costs, even though the technology has not improved. How could there be a decrease in reclamation costs, even though the technology has not improved? Well, we must be going to places where it's cheaper to reclaim. And that is what answer choice C deals with. We've gone from the expensive areas to reclaim to cheaper areas. So the prediction broke. Two more. Go ahead and hit pause and give this one a try. This one is another prediction plan. We are predicting that the number of Verdlanders getting these radio programs won't increase much. That's the prediction, because the number of radios hasn't increased much. The number of radios who can pick up this signal hasn't increased much. It's our job to wonder, maybe that's not true. Maybe the number of Verdlanders getting this program will increase, even though the number of these special radios has not increased. We know there's more radio stations broadcasting this stuff. Yeah, the number of radios hasn't increased, but what if those stations reach more people than before? And that is why B is correct. And last but not least, hit pause. Give this one a try. This one is a guessed cause. We are wondering the cause that we're noticing that the size of the clans varies a lot season to season. Oh, it's probably because we're guessing a cause that it's infant mortality that varies season to season. We wonder, is there another reason why the family size might be varying? Or in this case, do you have other evidence for infant mortality being the thing? Is it really infant mortality that's seasonal infant mortality that's causing this? And E answers that question. The snakes, the predator of the young prairie voles, are seasonal. Okay, well, seasons where they're active, clan size drops because of high infant mortality. Seasons where they're inactive, clan size grows. So this is more evidence for the guessed cause. All right, gang. Again, we have other free options out there. Take a look. Take a look at those other videos. They will deepen your understanding of critical reasoning. You can very much apply these categories to the arguments in those videos. But hopefully getting a sense of which world you're in gives you a sense of what thing to think about. And that will help you notice what not to think about. Okay. Scope is huge in critical reasoning. I will see you all next time. Until then, happy studying.